The long-awaited Arc patch is finally live. Players will now be able to play Gigantic on the Arc client on what is to date the largest patch since the game's conception. Everything from new UI to hero balancing and even modified base game mechanics are included in this update. Hello everyone, this is Wolfie, and after a long time coming, I'm so happy to finally be back and be covering this patch. Now what this video is going to be is a very basic overview of what's included in the Arc client patch as I go through the patch notes and try to touch on everything just slightly. I'll be trying my best to pump out videos in rapid succession going into more drastic detail on the really big things in this patch, so keep your eyes open for that in the near future. But without any further hesitation, let's jump right in. Now the first thing everyone's going to notice when logging in is not just new amazing artwork, but a brand new menu UI and a new in-game interface. This update still features some familiar Motiga colors of blue, but now with a much brighter and vibrant use of white. Now I'm not an art critic by any stretch of the imagination, but even I know that this is intended to make things feel more alive and dynamic and colorful instead of dull and boring like it was before. The idea is to make the game feel prematurely exciting and to give players a sense of wanting to explore what's in the menu while they wait for a cue to pop. Every MOBA style game does this, from League of Legends to Smite to Overwatch. Everything is much more streamlined and easier to access with a little bit of trial and error, and overall I think it's a very welcome change. Perhaps though I would like the ability to tone down the brightness of everything. I know that's been a big issue for those with much more sensitive eyes. The in-game UI has also been overhauled yet again to favor much larger and more colorful boxes and windows. The largest changes would be the health and stamina locations, which now include segments, new and larger boxes to show your abilities and your skill points, and a larger and easier to read upgrade system with much more streamlined information and icons to show what you're actually getting from the upgrade, which is very nice. The smaller changes would include larger Guardian boxes, a more orderly power feed and death recap, and even a small little pocket that shows your current level and how much experience you need to get to the next one. Overall, I like it. I just think it's something we all need to get used to, especially the health and stamina bars. Moving on, Gigantic has continued to trend the forcing of first-time users to play a brand new updated tutorial, and honestly, if you haven't played it yet, I highly recommend doing so. It's very hand-holdy, but I really don't think that's an issue, considering that to this day, there are still a lot of casual players that don't understand what veteran players like myself consider to be base mechanics. On top of that, Motiga has implemented bot games, which is very exciting because now you can try out new heroes without feeling like you're going to be a huge burden to your teammates. Granted, the bot AI is really not that impressive by any means, and they're not a threat at all, but it'll allow players to try out new stuff in an actual battleground with mechanics in play instead of just at the practice range. What's also exciting is that players will actually have account progress in bot matches, including hero mastery and fortune cards. So if you're getting those fortune cards that you just can't complete for some reason, go into bot games, you'll get it done. Now here's a big feature. Motiga has implemented an in-game voice chat. Now, like the patch notes say, it is a very bare bones and will have its ups and downs. Voice chat will be on by default and it's a constant active mic. There is no voice activation and no push to talk as of yet, so please keep in mind that when you're playing the game, everyone can hear everything that you're saying. As far as I'm aware, there's no rule to make it so that your mic is not active while listening in case you're one of those people who just want to follow orders instead of giving input. Trust me, I understand. So for now, you will have to settle for what we have. Being someone who has seen this voice chat system grow from the ground up, I can tell you that there have already been major bounds in quality, and I know that we will have a much better experience in the coming weeks, so just sit tight. For our lore lovers and world building players, me being one of them, I'm very happy to announce that all 18 of our lovable heroes now have full voice acting with the exception of Taito and HA because they squeak and beep boop respectively. All of these voices are amazing, and I highly recommend that you take the time to actually listen to what they have to say when you use your abilities. Even things like reach and critical health, jumping, dodging, getting healed, and all of the quick messages are covered. Their personalities are so unique and colorful, and I love everything about it. Right now my favorites are Vodin, Vadasi, and Zenobia. The one-time account copy has been a topic for a very long time, but now we actually have the full details on what gets transferred over. So what will be transferred to your platform of choice will be heroes, skins, creatures, active and completed fortune cards, badges, medals, crowns, active crown and prestige boosts, and your MMR. You will not have your rubies or any platform exclusive skins transferred. Now, as stated, this is a one-time deal and it has a very limited time window of access, so make sure that you don't miss it if you want to do this. Another big subject is the stamina changes. Stamina has been a huge balancing act since the game's early stages, but Motiga has finally decided to make everything basically universal. All heroes now have 100 total stamina and their dodges cost 25 stamina, which means that all heroes can now dodge 4 times consecutively before they become exhausted. Sprinting cost has been increased as well as jumping and jump attacks, but to make up for this, and this is arguably the most controversial thing in this patch, skills no longer cost stamina to use, and there's no stamina cost for sprinting or jumping while out of combat. What's intended here is that battles are to become more dynamic. Your skill level in a fight is now dependent on stamina consumption solely in your movement, and you're not punished too heavily for spamming your abilities. I will leave one spoiler by saying that this is going to be a subject for a very long video, so expect that in the near future. The other most controversial subject in this patch is instant summoning creatures. So creature summoning is mostly the same. You stand on a point, hold a button, consume focus if you want adults, you get a creature. Except now the creature summons instantly and is ready to fight after a 6-second channeling time. In an attempt to balance this out, creatures no longer perform their burst skills after summoning, the most notable one being the Bloomer's giant heal. Creatures also have less overall health and supposedly less damage, and their other nerfs are across the board, but this is a huge subject that I will save for another video as well. This topic was also covered by the One Pixel podcast show by Bazil, Zatori, and Light of Hope on Baz's Twitch channel, which is linked in the description. If you want more information on their ideas about this change right now, go ahead and give that a listen. Respawn times are now locked into 15-second respawns for the entirety of the match. Teams still spawn together, so when the first person dies, the timer begins. Each death adds 2 seconds to the timer, and a full wipe adds 10 seconds to the timer. This means that skirmishes will be happening a lot more frequently, with people coming in and out of fights in rapid succession, even into the late game. There is still reward for wiping the entire enemy team, but it's not quite as heavy. The weakness debuff has been set into 2 tiers of 25% and 50%. Before, there were a lot of abilities that applied anywhere from 10% to 60% and were all unique cases that stacked on top of each other. There are still special exceptions such as Zenobia's Compounding Sorrow upgrade, which applies a 60% weakness, and HK's Debilitating Rounds upgrade, which is a stacking weakness of 5% per bullet to a stack of 50%. But for the most part, this is a nice change that makes things much less complicated. Armor has been changed so that heroes and creatures no longer have unique front, back, and sometimes even side armor. All adult creatures and heavily armored heroes such as Margrave, HK, and Vadasi now have an all-around 25 armor. All baby creatures and lightly armored heroes such as Taito, Sven, and Beckett now have an all-around 15 armor. There is still a motive to hit heroes from behind though, since they will take 10% bonus damage, so for the most part this is not a big change but still notable. Rubies will now be awarded in big chunks instead of trickling slowly from multiple sources in the game. Gaining rubies from Hero Mastery and Medal ranks has been removed. However, the amount of rubies gained from every 5th level account has been raised to 50 rubies when below level 50 and 100 rubies when above level 50. Fortune card sets have not been changed. Mathematically speaking, this does mean that players will gain more rubies over time, but only if you do more work, so more input equals more output. Guardians have had several changes made to them, so much that I could easily make 2 or maybe even 3 videos on them alone. These are the biggest changes. Guardians are much more threatening, dealing significantly more damage than before at a more consistent rate, and also applying soft crowd control effects like slower push with their attacks. Guardians will deal a stream of warning attacks followed by a burst attack similar to the attacks made during the Rampage. Guardian melee attacks also deal significantly more damage to the point of being almost one-shots for over half the cast and also hit a larger area, so it's really not worth it anymore to chase that low health Mozu. Guardian positions have been changed so that they stay in one place before clash and stay in one place during the clash instead of falling back after taking damage in either phase. As such, this means that the maps have had their sizes reduced since there's no need for that back area anymore. And finally, Guardians will no longer take 0 damage with a 100 power shield. The enemy Guardian will always deal at least 1000 damage on their Rampage attack, so auto wounds are always possible. This change was made because the games were lasting much longer than intended because of power ties, so this is another one of those welcome changes that we just need to get used to eventually. Mentioned slightly during the Guardian positions change, maps have also received updates and changes. The biggest change being that all 3 current maps are now smaller because there's no need for a fallback position for the Guardians after they take damage, since they stay in one place during the entirety of the match until the clash phase. Ghost Reef now has some new walls to traverse around and some slightly shifted cacti and Teslar's machinery, and the 8-point creature has been moved to within the left side cave both during and before clash. On Sanctum Falls, the summoning points have been changed to 2 friendly points, 2 enemy points, and 2 neutral points. This means that Sanctum Falls actually has the least amount of summoning points of any map in live and in development, which still makes absolutely no sense to me, but that's just my opinion. A couple new ramps and platforms have also been added to the Sanctum Falls map around the Guardian pits in hopes to encourage players to attack the Guardians more often during rampages. Siren Strand, much like Ghost Reef, has also had some terrain changes here and there, and the Guardians now stand where the A point used to be. This point has been moved down into the valley closer to the ship instead, meaning that all 3 points are now very forward and vulnerable. Unfortunately, D point has not been changed for neither before nor during Clash, but creature changes have supposedly made them a bit more susceptible. A new feature on both Sanctum Falls and Siren Strands has been implemented to push players towards the Clash arena once the Clash begins. An avalanche will now fall from the mountainside of Siren Strand and push players towards the water, and on Sanctum Falls the river in the middle will flood all the way up to the stairs leading to the Clash arena. And last but not least, of course, our lovable heroes have received some balance changes. For the most part, they are bug fixes across the board, but there are some pretty significant changes for a few. I'll go over most of them briefly for now, and then later I'll create videos organizing them into specific categories. Ashlyn has had several Into the Blade bugs fixed, and Kador now moves at a more consistent speed. Ashlyn will now gain all Into the Blade effects when Kador dies, but is also briefly stunned. Her abilities are still given long cooldowns as well. Terrify can now be targeted at a short range again, meaning that it can be used for more than just a self-peel. Beckett has had some bug fixes with her grenade and cannon, the most important being how her base damage would actually increase with most cannon upgrades, which I didn't even know was a thing, so props for that fix. The splash from Charnock's uncharged fireballs now deal less damage than being hit by the direct projectile, and the Scorching Flames talent on Dragon's Breath no longer buffs the damage of Detonate and Hot Hail. This means that Charnock will be dealing the correct amount of damage but less damage overall. Griselma's Shattering Rift upgrade on her Q ability now hits all targets when the rift closes instead of just the target closest to the center. The upgrade description also properly states that the skill dazes. Kaboom Box, which has been a must-take upgrade for HK for the longest time now, has finally been nerfed. The fire field duration has been reduced by 1 second, and the burn effect now stacks at only 10% with other burns instead of 100%. This change is a huge reduction of HK's burst combo, but still leaves him in a good place to get his job done. The Bombardment Clash talent has also been changed. Instead of the mortar shooting faster and further, it now increases the burn duration by 1 second and gives extra focus during the clash phase. Imani has received several bug fixes where her upgrades on her special ammo would either deal the incorrect amount of damage or would not trigger certain effects. However, the most welcome change is that Imani is no longer immune to disruptions while using her focus. The core community has put blood, sweat, and tears towards finally making this change, and our work has paid off. Good job, team, we did it. Gnosis' biggest change is that his focus ability skill ceiling and floor has been reduced, meaning that it's now harder for enemies above or below him to be affected by it. I did recently get told that there may also be buffs coming to his defensive upgrade tree on Bull Rush, which would be very interesting. To counteract the armor changes, Margaret's bonus armor after using Ground and Pound has been reduced to 15 instead of 20. The Pound of Armor upgrade also now only gives 10 armor per enemy hit instead of 20, though mathematically this still gives Margrave a temporary 70 armor when focusing 3 enemies, but who's counting? Margate also gained the Perseverance talent to replace sustained abilities since skills no longer cost stamina. Paco now gains the correct 25 bonus armor when using Slip and Slide and the Uninhibited upgrade. Paco's focus also received 2 major bug fixes, the first being that applying Curse to someone who was frozen would permanently snowman them until they were killed, and the second being that enemies immune to hit reactions would still become snowmen. Trip's focus has been completely reworked. You still become a lightning storm that stuns and damages an enemy, however the ability is now a ranged projectile, meaning that players will have to aim the skill. Trip will teleport to her target on a hit, but if the projectile misses, then she will return to the location where she cast the spell. Bladestorm is now more skill dependent and less likely to bug out, and most importantly, the skill actually has some counterplay to it. Taito has had some fixes and nerfs here and there, but the most important ones are that Taito now dashes less distance on his dodge attacks, and animation cancelling has been removed entirely. Larson the Bear has gone into much more detail in one of his more recent videos discussing Taito's changes this patch, so I recommend giving that a look. The link will be in the description. Sven's bug fixes are primarily centered around his healing upgrades. Absorption Matrix no longer stacks at 100% with other healing effects. Other talents such as Precision Prescription and Potent Medicine now have the proper healing values, and Sven has also received the Focus Healing upgrade on his Focus to replace sustained abilities. This means that both sides of Sven's Focus upgrade trees are very viable depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Vadas's only real change is that Cleansing Wind now removes debuffs from her as it was intended to do. This seemed to be a fairly rare bug, but a good one to be squished regardless. Voden has received significant changes and bug fixes for both playstyles. Green Man now properly fires poison arrows if the clone is standing within the poison field, and several fixes where the clone would get destroyed and Voden's stealth would end prematurely have been implemented. The Companion's Boom talent has been changed so that it deals more damage, however Voden no longer gains stealth. This change makes it so that players provide more team utility, but they have to sacrifice self-survival. Bug fixes have also been made to the healing spring, such as correct healing values and being able to cleanse allies, both being very welcome changes for those who like playing a more support style Voden such as myself. Wu's focus supposedly has more responsiveness when using the ability. What this means is not exactly stated, but I guess if it works, it works. Zenobia's focus now correctly applies the proper stasis durations depending on the rank, being 4 seconds for level 1, 5 for level 2, and 6 for level 3. I guess this really was one of the longest living bugs after all, but it's finally gone. And lastly, Zandora can no longer gain the Aura of Strength without performing the skill because of the Lancing Blow upgrade. The Battle Armor upgrade on her E ability now also works with Starlance Strike. And that will be the end of this video. The updates mentioned are, in my opinion, some of the more important ones in the patch notes. If you haven't read the patch notes yourself, please go to gogigantic.com and read them for more details. As stated before, I will be going into much more elaborate detail on a lot of the subjects covered here, so be sure to like, share, and subscribe so that you know when those videos come out. Thanks for watching, have a great day, and I'll see you on the airship.